The LSU Tigers are headed back to Omaha in the College World Series, helping us break it down. Third week in a row, keep the vibes high, why don't we? Bryce Koon of Go 247, the 24/7 sports affiliate covering all things LSU Tigers. Bryce, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time, and I'm glad to be talking with you once again as Gomaha is the theme of the week. What's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Several things, Chris. First off, the LSU fans that watch this, they're probably like, first off, this is not the same setup. What are you doing with the Troy flag after the 2017 beatdown inside Tiger Stadium from the Trojans? The second thing, I'm glad we're still talking, man, because we don't have to talk about the Braves. So as long as let's keep this thing rolling so we don't have to talk about the Atlanta Braves. No, man, but I'm excited to hop on with you. And, hey, who knows? Maybe we can keep this weekly segment going, maybe into the late month of July.
I was going to say, Bryce, you look pretty good for a guy that's endured as many one-run losses as you have.
Dude,
I got to be honest, because
the
Braves it's a new level of heartbreak every day.
It's rough. It's rough.
It's pretty rough. But thankfully, who's not breaking hearts these days are the LSU Tigers, Bryce. I want to talk about briefly the Super really quickly. Listen, we all expected LSU to handle their business throughout this postseason. We felt like it shaped up really well, but going into the Supers, you knew West Virginia was a scrappy team. They came out of Clemson. They were going to give you everything they had. But LSU, again, for the most part, I think Bryce takes care of their business. 16-9 in game one on Saturday, a little bit higher scoring than expected, but the LSU offense explodes. And then Sunday, 12-5. And that was the theme, obviously. You scored 28 runs in 2 games, which, you and I were talking last week. Hey, the question is, what is the offense going to do? You felt really good on the mound, and boy, did they ever deliver. Mm-hmm. Thoughts on LSU's performance in the Supers and just how it sets them up for a potential run in Omaha?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, just took care of business, right? And I think that was one probably, dare I say, Chris, probably the least drama-filled, super regional. I know there were some, high-stakes moments and some other ones that just even went 2-game sweeps. But for LSU to walk into this with all the drama they had, obviously last weekend in the regional, to me, it's one of those things where you faced a West Virginia team, like we talked about, very scrappy, wasn't going to go away. You saw that in Saturday's matchup. And then obviously, last night you had to wait out the 3-hour rain delay, which I think a bunch of people tweeted, but I think you tweeted as well. They're not ready for this, 3.5 hour, let's just say what it is, liquored up crowd inside Alex Box that's going to have a good time. There was so many videos, Chris, of people walking across the street to walk-ons, coming back in, tailgating. I mean, you know how it is. So
it was only fitting, by the way, that it ended with a 3-hour rain delay at Alex Box. It was only fitting that the season at Alex Box ended that way.
I think there were 2 series this year that weren't affected by rain, and even the lack of rain, whatever it was, lightning. So no, man, I think it was a really productive weekend from the offense. I mean, look, I talked about this last week. Like a guy like Stephen Milam, man, he torched some baseballs this super regional weekend. They needed to get him going. Jared Jones, I don't care what he did, and the fact that in the game last night he sat on a breaking ball and drove it to opposite field. That's a massive development for him as he gets ready to go to Omaha, because he needs to be able to be a piece for you. The lineup changes. They start Josh Pearson off in the one hole in Saturday's game. A veteran guy like that off the bench, that's not somebody really that everyone has on their roster that has played in Omaha and played a big role on that 2023 team. So I think altogether LSU fans kind of leave the weekend happy. I think we kind of talked about this, and, you get into the monotony of just the keys. Well, you got to play this. You got to play good defense. You got to have timely hitting. I talked about you needed guys to eat some innings for you. William Schmidt, being able to get out of that game, as much as he could. I think he recorded like 4 or 5 outs. And then you throw Maverick Rizzi there at the end on Saturday. You didn't have to burn a big arm because your offense was able to do some stuff. And even last night, to a certain extent, Cooper Williams, man, he's really emerging as just a dynamic weapon. And I love that arm slot from the left side too. So a lot of storylines there, but hey, West Virginia made, what was it, 4 or 5 errors in the 2 games, and LSU took advantage. You have to do that. And I love what Dave Neal and Ben McDonald talked about is you can't make mistakes like that. And LSU fans have kind of become accustomed to it at times. LSU's made those mental mistakes. West Virginia made those, but LSU took advantage. So altogether, man, great weekend in the box. A big send-off for a lot of guys. Cade Anderson getting his last outing there, we believe. Anthony Iance in there as well. A lot of the seniors, Jared Jones, and kind of felt like a fitting end to the season in terms of Alex Box. Now, look, in about a month, Tiger fans are hoping they're going to pack that out for a national championship celebration, which there'll be 14,000 strong standing and waiting for them as they get back from Omaha.
Yeah, Bryce, just to echo what you said, it was a complete weekend, I thought, for the Tigers. And it's funny, you mentioned the 4 or 5 errors, and I laughed because there were about 2 or 3 more errors that weren't even recorded as errors because the ball was never touched. But West Virginia is struggling to catch a pop-up. That poor second baseman. I mean,
brutal.
He's seen better days. There's no doubt.
Yes.
The wind at Alex Box is no joke. Again, you were there, Bryce. You've been there all season, and it's so you talk to Jay Johnson, you talk to this team, you've talked to the coaching staff. It's so interesting. For those of us 30,000-foot view, we're kind of on the outside like I've been. I've said this throughout the season, and I love LSU's fans to death, but they're a little bit antsy at times, which isn't a bad thing, but they are just antsy, right? I mean, how many times have we seen fire Jay Johnson on the timeline, or Jay Johnson being compared to some old football coach that inexplicably people like? What was the level of emotion with Jay? I'm sure he was pretty composed, but I'm sure deep down it was a really satisfying feeling for him that, the majority of the fan base had his back, but, to get to the pinnacle, to get to Omaha, it was a season in which LSU was at that mountaintop all season, but they definitely went through some adversity to get to this point. What was the messaging and kind of the energy you picked up from Jay and that entire team last night?
I think the biggest thing was, immediately after the final out, you record the final out and some of the guys are celebrating the field. And even, I went back and watched some of the TV copy of the game and, Stephen Milam, just kind of taking it in, because 2 years ago, that was a guy who was in Omaha watching that group. So for him to be able to know that he's a part of a group going to Omaha is pretty special. But Skip Bertman, the father of LSU baseball, I don't want to age him. He's not the grandfather. He's the father, the founding father of LSU baseball. The embrace that he had with Jay was, a little bit longer than the normal ones you see. And I think there's just a sense of gratitude. And, I think this made its way. A bunch of TV reporters kind of got this, but I kind of saw this as well. And there's some great video out there on Twitter and X for people to go watch. But Jay embracing a lot of the guys, the transfers, Daniel Dickinson, a guy that played a big role. And, we don't talk about Chris Stanfield, who's God, I mean, he's such a massive piece. And I talked about that last week. And, just understanding what it takes to get here. And I think at a place like LSU, you mentioned the antsiness of it. The fans expect to be at Omaha. Like, it's not good enough to go win in Hoover. It's not necessarily good enough to win a regional. It's not necessarily just good enough to squeak by in a super regional. You want to go to Omaha and you want to get to that final 3-game series. And that's the expectation. That's the standard here. So I think that just in terms of watching Jay interact with the guys and know that, like you said, they were a de facto top 6, top 7 team all year. There was a lot of shuffling in the rankings, but it was one of those things where understanding the grind, and that was something Dave Neal mentioned on the TV broadcast, and I thought it just fitted this team pretty well. Like, we know the talent they have. We know, let's just talk how it is. We know what they spend to get this talent there. But as well as I do, man, I think we've all individually kind of had our arguments against, baseball's different and there's a lot of variables that can go wrong. And to know that this team had the talent and up until this point, they've made good on that. That's a satisfying feeling for the days in the fall when you're playing fall ball and you'd make those road trips, to play teams unofficially. And when you get into winter workouts and get into the February and you start ramping up, it's just one of those things where it's not the end, but it did feel like it closed a chapter, especially with the last game at Alex Box, for those guys to know, hey, we've set out to do what we wanted to do. We've accomplished parts of it. And you can kind of see them kind of just take a second and enjoy it. And I think that's really important because, man, this, and I know I was talking with Blake Ruffino of AYS, who you have on a lot, and we were talking about this morning. Jay is baseball 24/7. Like, that is just his mentality and how he is. So to see him take a second, talk with Skip Bertman, talk with, the group of players that transfers, the young guys, a Derek Curiel, who is like a kid in a candy shop when it comes to talking with Jay Johnson. I mean, it just shows you that sports get crazy and money's being thrown around, but at the end of the day, it's the brotherhood, the relationships, the bus rides, whatever it is. It's what makes it special. And these guys are going to have a couple more weeks in the tank, and I know they're excited to get after it.
So, Bryce, with that being said, let's turn our attention to Omaha. I'll throw a fun one at you first. Does anybody stand a chance in beating LSU's record or beating LSU at the Jello shot competition at Broncos?
You saw Jake Brown, outfitter who destroyed a baseball last night, by the way, to deep center. You see his interview when he was like, "Let's go break our own record." And I think LSU could break it. If they stay there long enough. I mean, look, you've been around the fan base a couple of times, and
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, I think it's really cool. I believe, Canes, the founder of Canes, came out there last time, really helped, charge some of that. Look, regardless if LSU was going to make it or not, Tiger fans were going to be there. It's an appointment viewing. It's part of the annual trip out there, the annual passage to head out to Omaha. So they've got a good shot at beating it. Outside of that, Arkansas can get pretty crazy. The Razorbacks could give them a run for their money there as well. And I don't know. I think it's interesting because I did see this, and I think it's regardless, obviously, what happens with Murray State and Duke. This is the first year, I believe, Chris, that we haven't seen a repeat of anybody heading to Omaha in a long time. So you got some first timers, you got some people that haven't been there in a while. So look, as well as I do, you get some of these college fan bases that haven't been out there since the 90s and the 80s, and they don't know what to do with themselves. So Rocco's is going to be rocking for the next week or two.
That it is, Bryce, and certainly we will be helping the tally for both of our SEC brethren. We got to be fair, obviously, but looking ahead to the College World Series, Game 1, when we got 7 of the 8, by the way, set at the time of us speaking, Duke Murray State tonight will determine the 8th and final participant. But Bryce, I got to ask you about LSU Arkansas. We don't know exactly when we're getting it, but we know we're getting it. Going to be an all-out war, and I think one of the best atmospheres we've ever seen at the College World Series. You were talking about the fan bases. Both are going to show up. Both are going to show out. We saw this series play out earlier in the year at Alex Box. That was a series, of course, LSU won. Thoughts on what will undoubtedly be an epic Game 1 matchup in Omaha between the Tigers and the Razorbacks?
Yeah, I was putting together a story on this because I think if you have been just a kind of a casual college baseball observer and you just want to taste, like, Chris, the question people always ask, like, if you wanted to introduce, like, aliens came down and you want to introduce them to what we love, LSU Arkansas at Charles Schwab Field, that's going to be about as good as it gets to the sport of college baseball, just in terms of the two passionate fan bases and just the level of talent. I mean, the latest MLB.com draft projections, Cade Anderson's creeping up there, number 1 pick by the Washington Nationals. They got him going too. So, like, you imagine you're going to have, some of the top arms, some of the top bats in the country, facing off. And I think it's a tone-setting game. And truthfully, having a conversation late last night with some of the media about this, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because we've done that for 2 straight weeks now. We almost got snake bit by a little rock, and now we are in the clear of West Virginia. But the team that wins this, not that they didn't already have confidence, I think it sets you up to say, okay, we just beat a team that can definitely win the title. We might not have to face them again. Like that type of mentality with how College World Series, schedules out and the bracket plays out is, if you get that win in the first game and it's a high profile opponent, it does wonders for your confidence of playing in that ballpark, of playing in that crowd and that atmosphere. So I think it's a tone setting game for both teams. From LSU's perspective, man, if Cade Anderson goes out there and shoves 6+ 7 innings, double digit strikeouts, I think it is going to reinvigorate everything that this fan base thinks this team is. And really, LSU's the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing anyways. I think those odds might get a little more favorable if they win that first one. And same thing for Arkansas. If they go and win that game, I just think it's a tone-setting opportunity for both clubs. And on paper, look, we know this game's played on the field, but on paper, 2 of the best teams in the country going at it. And like I said, if I had some family from and I don't, from Poland or something like that, I don't know why I picked that country. If I had some family from Poland and I had to bring over to show them college baseball, I'm taking them to Omaha, and man, I hope it's a night atmosphere there, and it's LSU Arkansas, because that truly, man, is about as good as it's going to get outside the championship series.
Shout out to any LSU fans in Poland who are watching this video right now, or listening to this broadcast. Bryce, you mentioned again, I agree with you. It is a tone-setting game. I think that the winner of that one probably feels like they're on the fast track to the national title. This postseason has been anything but. It's been expect the unexpected. It's been anything but what we expected. The top seeds are getting eliminated left and right, so you can't take anything for granted. With that being said, though, and I want your perspective, because when you look at the Omaha 8, Louisville, Oregon State, Arizona, Coastal on the other side. And you got LSU and Arkansas who are going to play each other, UCLA and one of Duke and Murray State. Again, expect the unexpected. This has been a crazy postseason, and I'm sure Arkansas feels the same way, but from the LSU perspective, like you mentioned, especially if you win that first game, I think you feel pretty good that you can make a real run at not just making the finals, but winning the whole thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm going to say something, and I'm so glad I'm on an SEC show so we can agree on this. But it's one of those things where you get through Arkansas, play the hypothetical game. You really start to look at those opposing lineups. And look, you have to be talented to get to Omaha. You don't get there by a fluke. I have the utmost respect for the ACC and what they do in baseball wise and a lot of other conferences. But when you face week in, week out, what these teams go through in the grind, like we talked about earlier in the SEC, you kind of look elsewhere and you're like, okay, there's nothing that we haven't faced in terms of a bat here or a part of the order where it's just, so fearsome. We haven't had to navigate through that. Like if you're Nate Yeske and Jay Johnson and you're kind of making the pitching plan for these guys and Josh Jordan, and you're sitting down with Cade Anderson, Anthony Irons, and Kason Evans, all of these guys, I really think that you kind of start to look at it, Chris, and you're like, okay, we know kind of what Arkansas is about because we've played them. But you get through that and you look at some of those other teams, it's no disrespect, but it's like that's where you have to hope your stars play like stars. Talent rises to the top, which I know it hasn't always happened, this postseason. But there is something to say about that LSU is taking care of business and they're here. So maybe they're trying to buck that trend, and so is Arkansas. So I definitely think it's probably in the back of the minds. It's definitely the forefront of the minds of the fan base, right? I mean, they've already made the hotel plans out a year in advance for the whole time in Omaha because they believe in this team. So I definitely think there's an opportunity there for, like I said, you win that game, you set the tone, and you're throwing your number 2 in Anthony Ianson, who's probably would be a number 1 on at least half of these teams, maybe every single one of them to some extent. You can make the argument. So they're sitting pretty, man. They really, really are. And I think it's more about, I don't think this team, and no team's the same. They're not an identical cut, cookie cut version of that 2023 squad that was laden with professional talent. But what they are is battle tested, like you mentioned. They've been through adversity. They've gone on the road to an Auburn team and just gotten embarrassed and gotten swept. So they know what it feels like when it doesn't go your way, and they've battled through that. So, I mean, I think it's an exciting time for LSU fans to kind of look ahead. Because I do agree with you. There is a sense if you navigate that first game to where you have the high road, like there's the clear-cut path for you to not just win, you can win some games pretty convincingly, and you could really set up, this is so important, set up your pitching for that, 3-game series. Now, look, we're saying this, Jay Johnson will not speak one word of what we're talking about right now during its media availabilities, but I do think that in the back of the mind of maybe even some of the players and the coaches on that team are kind of like, okay, golden opportunity to really take advantage of this draw that not a lot of people expected to kind of head out to Omaha.
Like you said, Bryce, the fun part is we get to look ahead, and it hasn't burned us yet, so we'll continue to do it. Bryce Koon, go 24/7, 24/7 Sports, one of the best in the business when it comes to covering all things LSU Tigers. They'll be all over the coverage of the Bayou Bengals in Omaha. Bryce, let the good people know where they can follow along as LSU tries to navigate to a national championship.
Yeah, if you want to follow me personally, it's at Bryce_Koon. I'll say this, Chris, because I get poked fun all the time. Not a name you'll forget with that right there. So you will not forget that. And I've been told that multiple times here over the past couple of weeks as people have followed me. So you do that, and head over to Go 24/7. Got a great community over there talking baseball. We got live threads, great conversation. If you're an LSU fan, kind of hop in. And hey, if you're a fan of another team that wants to know more about LSU, you can kind of come over and get some of that coverage as well. But I know, man, we're ready. I was talking to you earlier, man. We're looking at some of the travel aspects of getting there. I know you're going to be out there, so if we get out there, we'll have to link up. And man, it is for two guys like us and a lot of people across this. It's awesome that this sport is growing in popularity, in recognition, in coverage, because it truly is special. And man, Omaha is one of those bucket list items for a lot of people. So hope to get out there and kind of see what it's all about. And obviously, for LSU purposes, hope to stay a long time.
Well said, Bryce. Appreciate you taking the time, brother. And let's do a Jello shot together here soon at Rocco's.
I love it. We'll contribute to the number for sure.